Hello everyone and welcome to the course preview and flyover for the Black Bear Amateur Championships. The Black Bear Amateur Championships are driven by Innova Discs and presented by the Southern Ohio Disc Golf Association. This preview video is brought to you by us here at CRDG Productions. I hope this preview gives you all a good bit of help and at least a little bit of a heads up as to what you can expect when you come out here and try to tackle the bear. That being said, let's hop right into it with hole number 1. Hole 1 is 344 feet and is going to play as one of the easier holes on the course and definitely one of the most straightforward. Anything on or over that road to the right and long, as well as the parking lot over on the left, is going to be out of bounds. And this ditch that we're flying over right now is also going to be hazard. Pay attention to the string line that's going to be up on top of the bank, because anything that lands down in there, you're going to be throwing from where it lies, but you're also going to be taking that one-stroke penalty with it. If you don't have the solid 250 consistent feet to clear the ditch every single time, I would just lay up short and then pitch up and take your easy par. But if you do have the consistent distance to get over that ditch and up onto the green, you might even have a pretty good green light to try to chase chains to start your round. Pick up this pretty good birdie and then start heading up the hill into the woods. Hole 2 is going to be coming in just a little under, or right around 200 feet. It is going to play fairly uphill at first and then even out as the fairway turns to the left. Now the drone is flying the consistent as far as most wide open option off the tee. This is going to have the least amount of trees to contend with, but it is a tricky line to hit. You're going to want something that's going to start on hyzer, moving from right to left, and right about here at the corner, once you crest the hill, is going to want to straighten out and then start flying straight at about a 45-degree angle from where you initially threw from. Now there is the backhand turnover or forehand line over to the left, but you do have some late trees to contend with. If you do opt for the right-hand gap, coming into this green is going to be a little treacherous as it slopes very severely from right to left. If you come in still in the air, you could very easily find yourself way down on the bottom looking up at the basket. Hole 3 is going to bring in the first par 4 of the course, coming in right at 470 feet. Now you've got a couple options off the tee here. There is the right side gap, which you can see on the right side of your frame, that kind of goes up the path, and that is the super aggressive play. If you can control something with a mild hyzer flip up to dead straight and finishing straight kind of shot, and push over 350 with that same shape, then absolutely attack it. However, it's very high risk for very high reward. Do with that information what you will. This is going to be the most common gap thrown right here, is right where the drone is flying now. Get through that left side gap with either a forehand or a backhand turnover, placement shot with a putter or a mid, or try to get aggressive with a driver and get some distance. Really good drives are going to be landing right in here, and that's really cutting down the distance that you have yet to approach this basket. Now the fairway does tighten up just a little bit as you get closer, but it does open up right about here. Now bear in mind that anything left of this fairway is absolute danger. There are a ton of trees and brush down that way, and it slopes down severely, so be very careful. Now this tree that's down on the right hand side, you don't have to worry about it, it's now a past tense. It was actually removed just after I filmed this fly through, so you're not going to have to contend with it. Now approaching the green, again where the drone flying now is going to be the widest part of the approach, and you'll be able to squeeze either a backhand or a forehand in through here depending on what you're most comfortable with. Something fading back toward that hillside to the right is going to be the safest, but it's also going to leave you with a death putt. Or you can try to go straight at the basket if you're brave enough. Alright, hole 4, and we're going to start climbing this hill. Now this is actually a pretty treacherous tee shot on this 420-foot par 4. You can either take the very tight left-hand gap and try to contend with a couple trees and keep from kicking either further left or straight back into the creek, or you can try getting through this main gap where we're flying right now. Most common play here is typically a forehand flex shot with something very overstable, pushing all the way out to the left, and you'll see right as we get over this hump that the fairway actually does widen out to the left to accommodate for that shot shape. Either that or you can try to pipe something dead straight right up the middle. Both of those are very hard shots to execute, but as long as you can at least cross the ditch and get up to the first high point, you'll be able to pitch up to the kind of preferred landing zone to then play this hole for par. If you kick off the fairway on this hole, par is going to be really, really difficult to attain because unless you get actually way up the fairway here, you're not going to be able to approach the green from where you're at if you are off the fairway. There are some pretty demanding landing zones on this hole, and only a couple of them that offer you the true gap to get all the way to the basket, which sets right on this pretty severe right to left slope. Anything coming in hard on edge is probably going to pick back up and roll back down the hill, so figuring out your angles whenever you're landing here is going to be very key to keeping yourself with a short putt, whether that be for birdie or par. Hole 5 has been moved back into the short pen for this year. We actually made a lot of this course much more difficult than it has been in the past, so we figured we would give you guys a little bit of a chance to kind of have one back. Moving back down to sub 200 feet, and in this short right placement for the first time in a few years, this is going to be a very aceable hole. Now whether you take a slower disc on a forehand and try to throw it right at this V gap and then let it stall and fade out onto the basket, or take something slow and try to get a backhand turnover over to it, either one can work. And now we'll transition from one of the easier holes on the course to arguably one of the hardest. Hole 6 is a par 5 coming in at a little over 600 feet. This is the longest hole in the course, and it is still very wooded. Being the only par 5, this still offers a lot of difficulty, and par typically is a pretty good score unless you get an absolute miracle drive. So there are a couple options you can do to get off the tee. There is a more straight gap down the left side hugging the left side rough that takes a lot of skill to execute, however is going to get you way up the fairway, possibly even over the ditch from the tee, which, if you know anything about this course, is an absolutely incredible feat and something that is honestly required if you want a look at this basket for birdie, or maybe even a sneaky eagle. However, it's very easy to kick off of this fairway and leave yourself with a bogey at best situation. However, most good drives are going to try to get up to the top of that first hill and just leave you as wide open a look at crossing this gap over the ditch and then back up the next upslope. Birdie is still attainable from the top of the first hill, you just have to really bite off a lot on the second shot to be able to put yourself in a position to get up and down for that elusive birdie look. Once you cross the ditch, you basically have two options. Are you going to stay on the high side up on the right, or are you going to take the little bit of the low side to the left? It just depends on which you're more comfortable with, your backhand or your forehand approaches, as to which side you want to be on. If you're a little more backhand predominant, you'll want to be on the high right side, whereas forehanders or lefty backhands will want to be down on the left. Either way, both of them are about the same width and fairness as far as the gap goes, and if you have a pretty well-rounded game, either one of these can suit. Make sure you're controlling your speed as you come into the screen, however, because if you do shoot long, you're probably not going to have a putt coming back. Alright, now coming off of that par 5, you've got another par 3 to look at, but this is no slouch. Hole 7 is 288 feet and is as true to a tunnel shot as you can possibly get. Between the really narrow gap the entire way down, the high floor and low ceiling, this truly is a demanding tee shot if you want to get all the way up to the basket. Now you're going to want to keep something very neutral, just try to keep it dead straight down the fairway. If you want to play with a little more overstability, hug the right hand side, Or if you're aiming with something a little flippier, maybe hugging the left. Either way, just try not to kick anything, because if you go OB over this road off of the tee, you're going to be moving to a drop zone which is right at the end of the tunnel, leaving you with a deep circle 2 look to try to save your par. Now once you do get out here though, be careful of anything coming in on edge, because some of this stuff can send you skipping straight over the road and out of bounds. Anything coming in and catching an anti-skip and roll can also pitch back down to the right and give you a really obstructed putt. Hole 8, par 3, this has a new placement coming in at about 290 feet this year. The placement the basket's in now is brand new and has never been seen before, so this is going to be a little bit of a challenge even for our locals. The hole itself is pretty well going to play the same, still trying to get out to this pretty wide open fairway on the left, and then start dipping back into the right, picking any of the gaps between the trees once you get far enough up the fairway, and if you can honestly fly over the old short pin that is right there, you're going to be able to start moving down toward this new pin location. Now we move this down here to introduce a little more difficulty and also to bring this road into play a little bit more than it used to be. Now, if you get something flare skipping in, you might want to put on the brakes really quickly, otherwise you can find yourself popping right over that road and out of bounds. Now, I will say it does take a very hard far skip to get all the way down to this green. However, there are also a couple sneaky backhand lines through those trees from the tee that if you can hit the appropriate gap, you can actually air it all the way down to the basket. Pick your poison. Any one of those options will work. However, just make sure you hit your gap. Hole 9 also has a new placement this year. Still a par 4, we backed this thing up to about 470 feet. The hole itself still plays the same, it just keeps going further down that hallway, but you'll see that in a minute. The tee shot is going to require something flying perfectly straight for about 180 feet before starting to move almost 90 degrees to the right. Now, we had a few trees come out, which did necessitate us moving this basket back a little further. It was getting a little too easy. We had a lot of trees come out in a recent storm, so we had to do something to kind of even the hole back out. However, since those trees are out right here in the corner, you can actually cut the corner off with a backhand turnover or straight at it forehand and try to, cut off a little more distance and get all the way down the hill on the drive. You can still go out and around the V tree before fading in with a stalling forehand shot or lefty backhand hyzer. Or if you're getting aggressive, like I said, you can try to cut the corner here and then start breaking down this fairway toward the old short pin. Now, a lot of this brush has already been cleared out after I got the filming done, but if you get off this fairway, you're still going to have a pretty obstructed look at trying to approach this green. Placement's going to be key here, because if not, this tree that you'll see right about, wait for it, now, right in the middle, is going to be blocking off the direct line right at the basket. So you will have to hug either the left or the right side of that fairway and approach into the green in order to access and give yourself a putt. However, do bear in mind that this is a lot of really firm, hard-packed ground. So if you land your disc with a little bit of speed right at that center tree, it's going to skip up and give you a really close putt. Now this is a new placement, and it is arguably a little bit harder. However, it's still perfectly attainable to get the birdie as long as you place your tee shot in the correct landing zone. Hole 10 this year is a brand new hole coming in at 383 feet. You're going to be teeing off and going straight at this pine tree. Now anything on or to the right hand side of the road is all OB, including all of this really pretty grass we're flying over right now. So if you are going to hang something out over the OB and trying to stall something in and really attack this basket and try for the probably going to be pretty elusive too, you're going to have to trust something that's going to fade back. Otherwise, if you never come back in bounds, you're only going to be progressing maybe 5 feet off the tee. Now, if you come up short on this and land and bury yourself into the hillside, due to the angle and how hard the ground is, you very well might roll back down to the bottom of the hill and give yourself a very obstructed approach to the basket. Now don't worry, that basket may look a little small. I didn't really want to carry a full-size basket around whenever I was out filming this. For the tournament, don't worry, it will be a full-size basket. Now this picnic area right here is going to be in play. It's not going to be marked out of bounds or anything, but it is going to offer a really obstructed putt, so I would try not to be there. Hole 11 is a par 3 coming right at 200 feet. Now, this might not look like it's as uphill until you step onto the tee pad and realize that this is way up there. Now, it is a climb getting up to this basket, so don't be afraid to disc up to a fairway or maybe even a distance driver to get all the way up the hill. While it is only 200 feet, it is going to take a pretty good throw to get the distance to go that far up, but you're also going to need to hit this very narrow gap, likely the one that the drone is flying through right now. The upside is, however, again, like a couple holes prior, this is very hard packed earth, so if you land right at this tree before the basket, you're probably going to scoot right up and give yourself a really close putt. Now if you kick either left or right, you're going to be really obstructed, so just try to stay in the middle. Alright, now if you've made it to hole 12, congratulations, you've made it to the highest point of the course. Everything, for the most part, is downhill from here, so that is something to be happy about. Something not necessarily to be happy about is how much danger is on hole 12. While it is only 228 feet, this does play along a ridge, so if you go off the fairway either left, right, or long, you can go down this hill quite a ways. You also have to contend with a lot of ground play on this hole, so make sure to watch your disc even after it hits the ground because it can end up in some really funky places. However, if you do lose a disc, we have been generous and offered a drop zone, which is the short tee pad, for anyone who loses a disc off the tee, so you don't necessarily have to climb all the way back up to that elevated tee. This will probably play right at par. If you can get a birdie here, you're taking strokes on a lot of people. Alright, hole 13 last year was one of the easiest holes on the course, being as it was a par 5. This year it's a par 4 with no other major changes. You still have the same two choices off the tee, and that would be playing the little safer shot to the right hand side of the center tree, or getting aggressive and trying to punch a straight shot straight down this left side gap. We'll be flying through the right side because it is the little bit wider of the two, and has a little less danger of trying to fly a drone through. Now, once you get past that tree, you're going to want to move just a little bit to the left. It's not as sharp as a turn as it looks like off the tee, so honestly, as long as you're fading just before that big tree to the right, and just continuing to really carry forward and straight, you're going to eat up a lot of fairway here. Now try to avoid fading too far back to the left because your approach shot's going to be pretty pinched off. Pretty good drives are going to land right here next to this kind of crooked tree and the holly tree, giving you another right to left moving hyzer down into this green. Now the drone's going to kind of take the route that you shouldn't throw a disc. You're going to want to throw just to the right hand side of that tree that we just went inside of and push back and down to the left. That is the widest alleyway going down this fairway, and honestly probably the one that's going to give you a higher chance of success. Now you can see the basket here, but this isn't the basket we're going to be going to. Like I said, this is going back into the long placement that is typically only for tournaments, and yes, this is also going to be elevated again this year like it was last year. So if you can get a second shot clearing over this downed log, you're going to be looking pretty good to get up and down for par, or maybe even have an outside chance at birdie. Once you get up close and can see that log, you're going to have a multitude of different options as far as how to approach into this green. The drone just flew the kind of straight shot right at it, but there's also a right-handed hyzer shot and a left-handed hyzer shot to either side of that. Again, we're going to be looking at where the mini basket is, but like I said, there will be a full-size basket and it will be elevated this year. This creek isn't OB, so don't worry about that. However, it is tough being a par 4, but it's still gettable. And while we're on the topic of really tough par 4s, we have the new hole 14. Now, this is a combination of the old holes 13 and 14 from last year, and the shot is pretty well the same if you're definitely playing for par. If you're playing for par, just play up to the dead center tree and just try to worm your way just around it to give yourself a look at throwing your second shot over to access the next fairway. However, we did open up a little bit of a gap here, so you can actually cross over this creek and really attack this hole from the tee. It is going to require an extremely well-placed shot and a lot of commitment because you're going to need to throw this disc hard to get all the way over the creek and working your way up the fairway to have a birdie look. As long as you're confident and can execute the shot, I would definitely be going for it. Now, once you cross over the creek, which, by the way, we'll be playing as casual, once you get over, you're going to want to start trying to move a little bit back to the left. Now that we're on the old hole 14's fairway, this might start looking a little more familiar once you get left just a little bit. You're going to have that familiar left to right moving shot into the green, which again is pretty sloped down and away from the basket. Distance control and speed is going to be very crucial on your approach into the green because you don't want to let anything be going in the air past the basket or it is very likely to just keep on floating down the hill. Par, honestly, is going to be a really good score on this hole, and birdies are going to be getting strokes on everyone. Alright, keeping the theme going of new placements for this year, hole 15 has a little new placement. Coming in at 280 feet, this is still going to be pretty well the same downhill shot as it has been in years past. However, the pin now is going to be tucked up and to the right. We were having a lot of issues with, people throwing pretty good shots, but getting just a little bit unlucky on either the putt or something like that, and then going and getting punished way too hard and rolling all the way down the hill. You can go from an easy birdie look to a double or triple bogey by that happening, and it wasn't necessarily fair to some of the players. So we decided to move the basket up and to the right a little bit. That way it gives it a little safer approach into the green, but you still have that danger of the hill on the left that is always looming there, ready to take your disc if you're a little careless and hit the wrong tree. Now there is also a kind of sneaky backhand route that if you slowly get an anhyzer to move into the right gap, can feed you straight to the basket. However, the most wide open shot is playing straight down the path with something that's going to fade in right at this downed log and work your way up into that green. Alright, hole 16 is a 200-foot par 3 going right back down the hill and is the last hole that's truly in the woods. Off the tee, you have two major choices. You can either take the upper left-hand gap with a forehand or a slow backhand turnover, or you can take the little wider open backhand hyzer line down to the right. Now, the backhand hyzer line here to the right is more open at first but then narrows up, whereas the top line is narrow at first but opens up as you get further down the fairway. Whichever one you pick, distance control here is key. This is a very, very fast green. Anything coming in with speed will very likely end up a lot further away than what you were initially planning. However, if you are aiming for the ace, I would try to bounce it right off this log. It's been known to work in the past. A 3 feels good on this hole, and a 2 is definitely a bonus. Alright, I hope you remember how to throw some faster drivers, because on hole 17, you're going to be able to open up your arm for the first time in a long time. Coming in at 541 feet, this is probably one of the most wide open holes on the course, minus of course hole 1. You only have a couple small things to contend with here in the fairway, however, pay attention because there is going to be a lot of added OB line on this hole. All of the tall stuff that you can see here is going to be out of bounds, as well as a rope line that's going to extend all the way up the right side of the fairway back to the tee. That OB line is also going to get pretty tight coming around this green, so you're going to really want to be very accurate and deliberate with your approaches so that you don't accidentally find yourself crossing over that line and taking that extra stroke. Getting up to about the mouth of that kind of strip way of fairway, where it kind of narrows in before it gets all the way up to the mouth of the green, is going to be a good drive. Anything really getting up into that hallway is going to be absolutely excellent. However much distance you can bite off the tee is going to help with the approach. Being a little further left is going to give you a better angle around that leaning tree, but again, you're going to want to put on the brakes before you get to the basket. And hole 18 is a 567-foot par 4. Now, bear in mind, the buildings on the left are out of bounds, so if you land on top of those, you have the option of moving to the drop zone, which is down by those trees in the center of the frame. Now, these tall weeds right here are not out of bounds. However, I would avoid them just as though they were. It's really hard to get in there and try to find your disc, and it's really not worth it to try to get too aggressive on this hole. Keep it in the short grass and try to bite off and attack the pin for the birdie on the second shot. Now, whether you take a straight at it kind of approach and just punch something straight down the fairway and under these branches, or trying the wider hyzer line to float around the trees and before all of the thick rough on the right and try to work up toward the short pin, either one of those will work. And the closer you get to the green off here on the right, the more options you're going to have. You have a couple early lanes for the backhand to try to work your way back into the woods and up to the green. However, the most wide open look is going to be straight down the path with a skipping forehand or lefty backhand. Be careful as you approach this basket though, because the creek behind it and to the left of it, as well as that road to the left, are all going to be out of bounds. These trees are excellent guardians as well, and can leave you with a kind of obstructed putt on this elevated basket. Par here feels really good, and a birdie is absolutely exceptional. Hole 19 has underwent a couple little changes from last year to this year. As far as the hole itself goes, it's going to be the same hole. You have the left hand gap or the right hand, either way you want to attack this, you have that option. The changes come in where the OB is placed this year. Unlike last year, this year, this is acting as though it is an island. You have to clear the creek and cross inbounds in order to take your next lie on the other side of the creek. If you never cross inbounds, you will be proceeding to a drop zone, which is a pretty tricky putt right at the basket to save your par. Now the basket is there where this mini basket is, and as I get over, I will be turning the drone around, that way you can see the access from the left-hand gap, which the drone didn't fly down. This is more of a park style hole with a couple good solid lanes at the basket to try to access and get the birdie, but there is still some danger with these trees. Those sycamores and cedars are very grabby, and if you're unfortunate enough to find yourself catching a limb, you're probably going to be dropped straight down to the ground wherever you're at. Now right there is the access from the left-hand gap, which is also very fair, and both are equally good at attacking this pin. Hole 20 is a 316-foot par 3, going uphill a little bit, straight through this big gap right in the middle. Now the beach area down on the left is going to be playing as hazard, so if you land in there, you're going to be taking it where it lies with that one-stroke penalty. The road up on the right is out of bounds, as will be a rope line just long on that rough. Trust me, it's going to be better just to take your OB stroke and play from the line rather than trying to play out of that. It's very thick. And as you can see right here, this does slope pretty hard from right to left, so anything in the air could get all the way down to the lake. And that brings us to hole number 21, the big finale, the island hole. 232 feet of pure nerves and stress. You've had 20 holes of pretty hard disc golf to this point, and we don't slack off at the end. If anything, we ramp it up just a little bit more. Now, it is only 230, and it is fairly downhill. However, the target that you're going to be landing on may as well be a postage stamp. The basket, which you can see the mini basket right there ahead of you, is going to be elevated again this year, and if that doesn't make putting a little more stressful, I've seen a lot of people hit that box off the drive and then roll back into the water in BOB. Now, if you miss the island off of the tee, you'll be proceeding to a drop zone, which is about 45 feet away and pointed directly back at the water. So you can lay up and take your bogey, or you can risk it and try to save the par. Now, the island itself this year was going to be a little bit harder to hit. The size of the island is going to be circle 1. So you'll have 10 meters out from the basket to land. But I think it's fair. 230 feet definitely should be able to land inside the circle. And that's the challenge of this hole. Not to mention putting all the stress on you right at the very end. Guys, I hope everyone has enjoyed this drone flyover of the Black Bear Disc Golf course for the Black Bear Amateur Championships, driven by Innova and presented by the Southern Ohio Disc Golf Association. I'm Christian with CRDG Productions. It's been a pleasure being able to get out and get this filmed for you guys. That way everyone can start having a look at the course and seeing what it entails and, what they signed up for. This is a beautiful piece of property in the rolling hills of, the Appalachian foothills. It's absolutely gorgeous, especially this time of year when the weather starts cooperating a little better. Temperature breaks. This is the best place for fall golf, and honestly, it's just a beautiful place to get out and get away. I mean, look at that lake. Come on. You can't really argue with that. If you haven't taken the chance to look around, there are a multitude of camping options here in the park, whether that be in the lodge, in the cabins, or in the campsites. We have 2 awesome campgrounds on the state park, one here just right down the road, and then another down by the Ohio River, both of which are amazing to stay at, and I recommend either one. I hope you guys are going to enjoy your weekend out here at the Black Bear Amateur Championships, and if you get a chance, come out on Friday to play the Little Bear Flex Start. It's an awesome way to play those bottom 9 holes in a kind of 2-round loop. You play 1 through 3 and then 16 through 21. You get to play that loop twice. You get to attack that island a couple times, and it's a nice, casual, leisurely way to get warmed up for the Black Bear Amateur Championships starting the next day. We've got also plenty of other really cool side events and things like that going on. Check the social media stuff and just check with us whenever you see any of us out and around. If you guys come out for practice rounds and see anyone working on the course, make sure to tell them thanks, because without our small core of really dedicated volunteers, this thing wouldn't be possible. Again, I'm Christian with CRDG Productions. I hope you guys have enjoyed this drone fly-through of the Black Bear Disc Golf Course, and I hope you guys are ready for the Black Bear Amateur Championships. I know we're ready to see you all out here, and I'm excited to see everyone challenge this course. Take care, guys.